Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another Irish Health Hour Chats. Today, I'm delighted to have Georgina Kearney with us. Georgina was a guest on Irish Health Hour on the hashtag Hour on Twitter last week, and all about the subject of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. And we had a great response to it, really, and a lot of people reading the blog. So I asked Georgina if she'd come on and speak to us in person about it, because I think sometimes it's great to get the personal touch and to really hear, because this is something that's coming into effect on the 25th of May, and something that I think that, some of us, I talk about myself, I suppose, I know what's happening, and I'm still kind of putting it on the long finger and hoping for wonderful information, which we're getting. And luckily, we have Georgina here to help us again, and she gave us there's a wonderful template on the blog that's on the website that I'll attach a link to here as well. So without further ado, I'm going to say, welcome, Georgina.
Thanks, Dolores. Thank you for having me. And thanks for taking the blog a couple of weeks ago. I guess my background is I'm an accountant and I have my own consultancy, and I partner with an accountancy firm, and both myself and my business partner, Niall Mooney of Accurate Accounting, we were coming across people, and they were expressing to us that GDPR was coming down the line and they weren't quite ready or didn't know what to do with it. So we've set up a company called dppl.ie, so Data Protection Providers Limited. And what we're trying to do is work with SMEs and organisations, self-employed people, to make the steps as easy as possible. So what we were finding is that there was a wealth of information about the Act, but not necessarily so much practical information for how to implement. So we're trying to support people by putting out information, giving guidelines on how to implement. And obviously, as a company, we work professionally with companies as well. We will go in and actually certify. There's no official certification for the GDPR as of yet, but we've created a protocol for all the areas that need to be signed off on. And so we go in, help companies to put that in place, and we go in and give our stamp of approval that that's happened.
Wow, that's wonderful service, isn't it?
Yeah, it's good. I suppose it's good. One of the things, the reason that there's so much talk about GDPR is because of the fines. So the Data Protection Commissioner has the authority to actually impose quite heavy fines on companies. But also, it's not just fines. There's actually the potential for civil lawsuits as well. It's really good if you get into a situation where you have a data breach or a complaint is made against you or a court case is taken against you. The more evidence you can show that you took it seriously, you put procedures in place, you trained your staff, all that sort of thing. But it's really good to have documented evidence of what you've done to get yourself GDPR ready.
That's fantastic. I love that. I think protocols are always wonderful, and that whole thing of proving that you've done the best that you actually can. Can you give us a general overview of what the whole GDPR is, just to start off with from scratch, if you don't mind?
Okay. No problem. So as you said, it's going live on the 25th of May. So it's a European regulation. So it's all about personal data and the fact that your personal data belongs to you, and I don't have the right to use it without your permission. So it's really enforcing that the rights of what are called data subjects. So I'm a data subject and my personal information is mine. And it's just strengthening up those rights because as we've seen more and more as technology has advanced, companies have more and more information about, private individuals, and it's not always treated with the respect that it should be. And it's really just strengthening up rights for data subjects. So on a personal level, we all have, stronger access rights to our personal information. And then for companies have to put procedures and protocols in place to make sure that those rights are respected. So it's really all about that.
Yeah, interesting. And I suppose bringing it back then to a whole health and wellness perspective, let's say. So, for people in the health and wellness, I suppose a certain amount of people like coaches and that, or therapists, they would actually be taking client notes. So, and it's all about this storage then and how we store them. Could you give us an overview of how you would recommend therapists, coaches, whoever else takes notes, how we do it to best comply with this new regulation?
Yeah. Well, again, I could kind of give suggested best practice, but everybody has to think about how they do it themselves. So I guess, I'd have some kind of guidelines maybe on if you're taking client notes, first of all, I suppose on your intake form, if you have an intake form, think about whether you need an intake form or not. And if you do have one, just really have to think about like what you're asking the information for. Because one of the principles of the GDPR is data minimization, only really asking for what you actually need. So I've seen forms before, we've all seen forms, that ask for like, lots of information. So don't just ask for the information. Really think about, well, when I take an assessment form, what do I need off that? Do I ever actually really refer to it again? Because I've worked in the health and wellness area myself, and you kind of do sometimes wonder, how much do you ever refer to that information again? So just having a good think about how much information you need on your form. And then in terms of client notes, it could be good practice to give clients reference numbers or, a client number or reference number. And so when you're taking a client note, rather than writing the client's name on the notes, have, some sort of reference for them. That could be an idea, And again, these are just suggestions. So I think it's good practice probably to keep any notes, put the date on it, keep it factual, about what you did during the appointment, what you plan to do in another appointment. Don't put in any assumptions, opinions, or anything like that, and keep it as brief as possible. So I guess, what I'm saying there is really keep your notes brief and keep them factual. Don't write down anything you thought or assumed or your opinion.
Okay,
that would probably be good practice. But sorry, go on.
No, that's interesting because, so that's very interesting. Thank you. That's wonderful information, especially as like a therapist myself. So basically when you say there, what was I going to refer to there now? It's gone out of my head there temporarily. Sorry. Oh yeah. Like our assumptions, let's say. So sometimes we may want to write a note, about maybe something that we may want to refer back to in the next session, like we would have with the client.
Yeah.
Am I going too deep by saying we shouldn't do that, or when we might be assuming something or anything,
Yeah, so I think the reason you probably steer away from opinions or assumptions is because, in case your client notes were actually ever requested in the future, it's probably best to keep it to, right, so the client said such and such a thing, let's explore that more in the next session. That's absolutely fine to write. But if you wrote the client said such and such thing, that must mean such and such. So you're making an assumption from what they said. That would probably be kind of going into territory you might not really want to go into, given that, the client has free access, technically to those notes, that those notes are about them. Definitely write down that they said such and such thing you want to explore, but just don't make any assumptions or opinions about what they said. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. It's good. It's good to go into the smaller nitty gritty bits, I think, and that's why I'm delighted to have you on here. So then, let's say we have this intake. Then we have just got our maybe name and email or phone number, whatever, and now we want to store it. Could you just take us through a process of how the best way to comply with the regulations to store this client information we have taken now?
Well, I know, one organisation that I deal with that I would say have very high standards. What they do is they scan the copy of the notes and they save them to a secure drive. So let's say it's a Google Drive for business and it's encrypted and it's completely safe, and then they shred the original copy. So you could do that. You don't have to, though. You could decide that you want to retain paper copies. It's just, if you're going to retain paper copies of information, you need to be thinking about like how you store that information, and is it secure. So it wouldn't be okay to just have it sitting in a folder in a room that anyone in your house can walk into. You'd want to keep it in a locked filing cabinet. So it's all about thinking about, well, where am I taking personal data, and then what are the risks associated with it. So probably best practice would be to scan it, shred the original, and put it into a Google Drive or something like that that is encrypted and only you have access to, and then you can be sure that it's safe.
Great. So when you say encrypted, you're talking about something that has a password, is that right?
It's password protected, and if anyone tries to access it that isn't authorized by that password or through that system, they can't get to it.
Okay, so that's a particular Google Drive for business. I must look into that myself, actually. Is there any other one, actually? Yeah.
I'd say all the main ones, like the Dropbox of this world and Google Drive for business, are safe.
That's great. Good to know there
Yeah.
again. As I say, I'm asking all the smaller questions today that I have you on.
Yeah. And you know, you could even think about as a therapist, because this is something probably I would have done when I was working in that area. Like, think about, like, do you need to take notes? You know, I went to
Yeah.
see a therapist recently, and you know, no, it was for a body treatment. You know, more like a sort of massage treatment, and didn't take any notes at all. There was no intake form, no notes. You know, and I was kind of thinking, that's, you know, I wonder, is that good practice? Because again, I'll go back to the thing of sometimes we take notes that we may never ever really refer to again. You know, so just a question, really always question, do I need this? So that sort of data, go back to that data minimization principle.
Yeah, like I practice EFT, and I always actually give the client the notes when they're leaving, because
Okay.
because EFT is, to me, it's my talking therapy, and I think that it's beneficial for a
Yeah.
client. It could be. I mean, the
Yeah.
notes are no good to me anyway, and even
Yeah.
storing them is something that I mean, you want the person to leave with actually clearing the block, not to have to go back to what you've done in the session anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just very interesting. Okay, just moving on a bit to, like, let's say,
Yeah,
communicate.
I
Oh, sorry.
just going back to that point, I would have been similar. Like, I practiced EFT as well when I was
Oh,
working,
okay.
coaching my clients. And again, like that, I probably did keep those notes, but I'm pretty sure, as you say, the client always shows up in a fresh position in the next session. So
Yes.
you don't. That's why I find, like, I kept things that I probably never really referred to, but I never
Yeah.
really questioned the fact that I was keeping it.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I suppose when we do our courses, maybe the whoever is teaching us says, you have your notes, and they might give us protocol, and we might just do it, for that reason. So yeah. So communicating with our clients, then, can you give us a little overview of how we go about, like, let's say if someone emails us during sessions or coaching sessions, what's the best way to deal with these emails?
I'd say in the case of emails, I know that the organization that I'm dealing with, a particular organization, and their guideline on client emails is just delete everything. Once the session is set
Wow.
up, once you've actually created the session and all that's done, just delete everything. And I think that's probably the best practice, is delete text messages, delete emails, delete, if you're doing, like, say you're doing an online Skype session, delete all the messages, and make sure that everything goes into, you empty your trash as well. So again, yeah, like that, so that, if your phone is stolen or something like that, that nobody else can access that information. It's just, I suppose, the safest thing to do. And again, I would be one of these people that never deletes any emails, it files everything, just in case.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's kind of like trying to step away from that and kind of going, like, do I need every single email that I ever receive from somebody? Do I really actually need to refer to them in the future?
Yeah, no, I like that, because I'm like that. My inbox, oh, it's a disgrace. But it's good. I think it's good to, and we're all so different like that, and how we do, how we set up our sessions, and how we. So it's great actually to speak to all the different types of people we could be. But it's good to know that then it also gets us it's actually better for our health and everything when we declutter, isn't it? So we don't have
Yeah.
all of us hoarders just releasing.
Yeah, it's like feng shui, Dolores.
It's feng shui, exactly. Feng
Feng
shui for our inbox. I love that.
shui. But also, I just want to go back to the
Sure.
actual the principles of GDPR. So the principles
Yeah.
are lawful, fair, and transparent. Purpose limitation. So if you take information that you're only using it for the information intended. So if you ask a client, is it okay for them to sign up to your newsletter, that's what you use that information for. The point I wanted to get to really was about how you store files, because part of, go back to that feng shui idea, is
Yes.
that you need to be organized about how you're storing information. Another
Right.
thing I've come across with people is that they have all these intake forms and client notes, and they're not in any particular order, and so everybody now have access rights, so they can make a request at any time to have their information, to access the information, to know what you have on them, to have that information rectified, to have it to have erasure. So you have to be able to find their information in order to tell them what you have, find the information in order to rectify, find the information in order to erase it. So you will be pushed to not only kind of keep your data to a minimum, but really, really organize it so that you can
Right.
actually fulfill those rights that people have. And at the moment, I hear a lot of people just kind of talking about, like, let's just delete everything, because everything is so disorganized that they probably never, not delete everything, but delete anything that's kind of non-current,
Sure.
Yeah, but I think going forward, you really want to think about, like, if you're storing things into your Google Drive, or what way are you storing them? You're not just dumping them in kind of so that you can find them in the future if that person wants to know what information you have on them.
I just think this is wonderful for the whole organisation, for ourselves even,
Yeah.
So just some people actually, it's something I've never gone into myself, but some people use WhatsApp groups for business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you maybe talk to us a little bit about that and how the GDPR affects that?
Yeah, so WhatsApp groups, I think that, I'm dealing with an organization myself, actually, who have a WhatsApp group. And the problem with WhatsApp is that there are certain rights. First of all, when you go into WhatsApp, just the very process of going in there, they have access to, your contacts and various information about you. I think the general, perception would be that WhatsApp isn't GDPR compliant. So it's kind of, you've got to be very careful if you're a business and you have a WhatsApp group. Another thing about it is people have the right to, have full access to their information and to have information rectified or raised. You can't do that with a WhatsApp group. So if somebody has put up information in a WhatsApp group and it's gone out to the entire group, it can never be rectified or erased or whatever that is. So I think you want to have strict guidelines. Either distance the WhatsApp group from the organization itself and say it's something that members do.
Right.
Or if you're saying it belongs to the organization, put in strict guidelines about how it's used. I know one particular organization I was dealing with, we're talking about that they'd have guidelines for members, and the guidelines will be, we only use the WhatsApp group to give you information. You're not permitted to reply, because what was happening is that there was an awful lot of chit chat happening on this group, all sorts of information shared, and then that's kind of official company information, but it really is just a conversation between members. So yeah, I go either that you separate the WhatsApp group from the business, or that if you keep it as a business group, that you're very, very strict about how it's used, and you get people to actually sign up and agree to use the WhatsApp group in a very particular way.
That's great information. Thanks for that, Georgina. Actually, something came into my head there too. Recently, I was doing a Facebook ad, and I think something came up in relation to the GDPR in relation to Facebook ads. But I must look into that a bit more. Have you have you come across that before?
Well, yeah, it's kind of, it's an interesting thing. I know, the scandal happened recently with Cambridge Analytica, and this whole thing about people being influenced as to how they vote in the US election. And, Cambridge Analytica were taking information in a seemingly underhand way, asking for information for surveys, but using it for something different. And again, that's called profiling.
Right.
And now under GDPR, you're only allowed to be profiled if you specifically consent to it. So it used to be that organizations like Facebook or Google, there weren't any necessarily clear guidelines around it. But now, in order for your information to be taken, in order to, profiling is using existing habits or characteristics to predict your future behaviors. So if you like this, you might vote for this person, kind of thing. And then, we can gear our ads or our newsfeed towards you. So, yeah, I suppose that whole area is something now that I'm not sure really how Facebook are actually going to deal with that, because another thing about GDPR is it's all now about consent. You have to explicitly consent for how your information is used. You can't have consent bundled into terms and conditions, bundled into some sort of way, or pre-tick boxes. So if they're going to do anything like even allow people to advertise towards you based on your preferences, I would say that you're going to have to explicitly consent for that to happen. But again, I'm not sure. I haven't exactly seen Facebook's policy on it yet.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting because now this is going back maybe a few months ago, and I know, but that's actually a very interesting point about profiling, because the whole Facebook retargeting is all about putting a bit of code on your website and targeting the people that visit your site. So that's a whole area too. But I suppose it's all good, and I suppose it's just about giving consent, as you say, which is a great answer to that. So thank you. Another thing actually I wanted to ask you about is MailChimp or similar email data collection sites like Aweber and that. What's the story around this? Do you could you explain?
Well, my understanding is that any of those large organizations like MailChimp have done their best to become GDPR compliant. So if you're using them in a way where, you're properly, I suppose a good practice would be to have a strong password as well, for your MailChimp account so no one else can access it. But whatever is stored in MailChimp is safe. However, the big issue for probably health and wellness professionals is making sure that if you put somebody into your MailChimp email list, that they've actually consented to be there.
Right.
And, we can all do it. Like somebody shows up at an event and they give us their email address for a competition or something, you know what I mean, on the day. And then you can add them to your mailing list. But that you just really need to be careful about doing some things like that going forward. It's all really about respecting, just understanding that your name and your email address belong to you, and I can't add them to my mailing list if you haven't consented for me to do that.
And let's just say I have an existing mailing list now, and I just wanted to make it a little bit more clearer that I had a policy. Would it be good practice for me in my next, let's say my next campaign I sent out through MailChimp, that I just advise people that I now have a template? What am I trying to say here? What you gave us
so I gave you a template in your article as a reference. If you go to your Irish Health Hour blog and the GDPR article I wrote, I have a link through there to a data protection policy.
The policy, would I tell people now that I have a policy in place? Would it be good practice for me in my first email, or my next email, let's say, to all of my lists, that I would tell them now that I have this policy in place and that they're safe? Yeah. Or is there need to do it, or would you recommend it, let's say?
Yeah, there's absolutely no harm in doing it. It shows people, I think it comes down to respect, because more and more people get annoyed about, being added to email lists or having, texts sent to them by companies that they don't like, that they didn't, or unsolicited. So it really is just a mark of respect, to your clients, and acknowledging that, you're interested in compliance and interested in respecting their rights. So I think there's no harm. It's not that hard to write, quite a simple, policy, which is just saying, looking at their rights and just confirming that you're going to respect all of those rights. And you can also, another thing in your policy that you can think about is information retention. So that's also another important point for health and wellness professionals. So you might want to have a think about, let's just say you do have an intake assessment form and client notes on a particular client and you haven't seen them in 18 months. How long do you retain them for? So you might want to have a policy that, if I haven't seen that person in 12 months, I delete their information. And how do you kind of go about systematically doing that?
Mighty, that's great. Yeah,
that's part of your policy, that you'd actually tell people, I keep brief notes, but I only keep them for a 12-month period after we finish working together, and then I delete them.
And is your policy then something that you store on your website, let's say, for public view, or is it just something that you have in a private page, let's say, that should any of your clients come along to you, that you can show them and direct them to a private link?
You can do it either way. I think there's no harm, especially if you've got a web sign-up form on your website, an email sign-up form. Okay. You can have a little link and you can say, here's the link, and you can actually set it up as a page on your WordPress, or you can even have it as a Google Doc. The one I gave you is a Google Doc, but on WordPress, you could just put it in as a page on your WordPress website, have a link through to it.
Well, that's great information. It really is, it's covering all these, as I say, because it's something that I read the blog and I just haven't got around to setting up the policy yet, but I was waiting for this chat as well to clear up a few things, a few issues I had as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell people about that we've left out here? Any question I haven't covered that you'd like to tell, or tell us a bit more about your own business even, or?
I suppose it makes me think about, doing your tax returns. It's one of those things that you're going to leave it till the end of October or the beginning of November. When you sit down to do it, it's actually not that hard, really.
Yeah.
It's just about, I suppose, I think setting aside the time and just saying, I'm going to give myself these few hours and just to have a think about things like, well, what do I need to delete? The stuff that I'm keeping, how do I need to organize it? How do I need to change my form? If I'm going to create a simple data protection policy, how do I go about it? So just even giving yourself a few hours to think about what you need to do, and then putting an action plan in place, and maybe spacing out, this week I'll do this, next week I'll do this, so you're not weighed down by it.
Good plan, but I have to say there, doing your tax return might be easy for you because that's because you were a qualified accountant, Georgina.
Doris, I also leave it till the last minute.
Oh gosh.
Just trying to think. I had some notes here: delete, minimize, organize. Yeah, explicit consent, data protection policy. Yeah, again, I suppose just the it's about mapping out the private data, personal data you're carrying, and working out where your risks are, and then looking at any changes required. So where risks are. Maybe if a password is not secure, or if you are keeping intake notes in a folder on a shelf that other people have access to. Just really thinking about what you're taking and how you're storing it, how you're transferring it, and just having a good think about it.
I like that, and I like the fact that you said about respect for people, because personally I hate being put into a group when I haven't asked to be put into a group. So I think it's always nice to just get that permission, isn't it? And to have that mindset of respecting the person's information that they're giving you. So I like that whole point. Georgina, if people wanted to work with you personally for any of the different things that you do, your accountancy, business consultancy, if they wanted to work with you in relation to the data protection, how do they get in contact with you?
Okay, so my website is sustainedgrowth.ie. So I work with businesses, helping them review profitability and cash flow. I also work in other areas like feasibility studies, tendering, fundraising, various different things connected with businesses. And I've set up a co-founded dppl.ie, as I mentioned, with an accountancy practice in Galway called Accurate Accounting.
What's it called, Georgina?
Called Accurate Accounting. So they're accurateaccounting.ie. It's run by Niall Mooney. They're actually based in Knocknacara, up near you, Dolores.
Very good.
And so that's a joint venture between us, basically, because we felt like we just have a lot of clients that need to be supported. We also feel like we want to have something in place, because we feel like maybe companies might not take it exactly 100%. Not that people aren't taking it seriously, but not everyone is taking the action that they need to take. Mm-hmm. And all it requires really is for one heavy fine, one serious court case, and people can be kind of scrambling to put proper solutions in place. And so what we're doing, as I was saying to you, is creating that protocol, creating that certification process. So we're working with a number of companies now, so that we have that process very clearly defined, and so that when floodgates open, as they may well do, we will be ready to help people and make sure everybody can get compliant as quickly as possible.
Well, that's great, and it's great that we have a resource now, and I'd certainly be happy to share your website. It is Sustained Growth, isn't that what you called your website?
Yeah, so my website is sustainedgrowth.ie, all one word, and then the Data Protection Providers Limited website is dppl.ie.
I'll be sharing the two of those for sure. Georgina, thank you so much for coming on. I think it was a great follow-up to the blog that's on the website, irishhealthhour.com, under the blog section and under the guest blogs. I think it's a fantastic blog because there's a template there as well. It's not just giving us the relevant information, but it's also giving us a template, which is great, because this is an area that I'm not good in. And we all can't be good at everything, and it's great that then we can pool our knowledge and help each other where we have those things that we just get scared off. So Georgina, thank you so much for coming on and giving us all.
And you can share my Twitter handle as well, Dolores. I know you have on a number of occasions anyway. But if anyone wants to tweet me and and ask any questions, if anything wasn't clear today,
great. I certainly will do that. Yes, you most find me most often on Twitter.
Yeah.
Great, Georgina. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks very much, Dolores. Thank you.